going live. This is Sally Ember with the image of Connie Dunn. We wanted to have the live face and actual communication of Connie Dunn, but the camera is not cooperating on her end, and for a very long time you tried to get on. Isn't that right, Connie?
I have for about an hour.
It's very frustrating, as everybody knows, when the technical stuff doesn't work. So at this point, we're going to continue, and I'm Sally Ember, EDD. This is Changes, Hangout on Air, Episode 3. Today is August 27th, 2014. If you're with us live, thank you for coming. We were going to have somebody helping with the comments, Rain Dowell, but she had a last-minute emergency and couldn't join us. So we're having personal problems and technical problems, and Time Warner is having a nationwide outage, so I don't know. There must be sunspots or problems with the ley lines. What do you think, Connie?
I don't know. Maybe the planets are not aligned correctly.
Well, when you talk, we get to see your face in the middle of the screen, and there's a circle around it, and it starts sending out all these great auras from around your picture. So it kind of goes with what you say. So let's hear a little bit about you. Introduce yourself. Tell us what you want people to know about you today.
Well, I'm Connie Dunn. I'm a book coach. I'm an author, and I also have done some illustrations. And had my camera actually worked, you would have seen all my beautiful quilts that I have. They are
oh, I'm so sorry you can't show your quilts.
Well, it's just one of those things, I suppose.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is I have it all set up here on a different screen, which we're going to use in a minute if it works. Although sometimes the screen share on the HOA doesn't work and it kicks me out. But if it does work, I'm going to show both Connie Dunn Books, your website, and your Amazon author page. And we're going to talk about some of the things you've put on those sites and some of your writing and some of your educational teleseminars and your publishing and all kinds of things this morning. But first, I have to ask you an interesting question. When you wrote the book, The Fairies of Fairy Beach, which Fairy Beach were you talking about?
I was talking about Fairy Beach Park Association in Saco, Maine. There is a Fairy Beach State Park very close to it, but this is actually a camp and conference center run by the Unitarian Universalists, and it has been there for well over 100 years. It was started by Quillen Shin a long time ago, a Universalist minister.
Well, that is so interesting because I ran the religious education program for the Keene, New Hampshire Unitarian Universalist Church in the late 1980s, and I ran a whole week of Fairy Beach conference for children and adults in July of 1989 at Fairy Beach.
That is very interesting. I was a DRE with the Unitarian Universalist churches in several churches.
When were you doing that? What years?
Oh, gee, let's see. I think I've been retired now for about 3 years. And so before that, I was doing it for about 25.
So I think I might have met you because when I first saw your picture with the Devorah Lansky Book Marketing Challenge, you were one of the authors and book marketing experts she invited to participate. Do you want to say how you participated in that?
Yes, I participated as an expert on press releases. So I talked about how to market your book using press releases. And I still think that's a very good thing to do when you're trying to launch your book. You need to send out as many press releases as you possibly can, and any time in between that you can figure out some other new, maybe new perspective on that, to go ahead and send them out, because that's how you might get asked to come on TV shows, radio shows, internet. I mean, you can send it to a lot of internet places as well, and anywhere you can send the press releases, always, that's free advertising if they run it. So, you know, you don't have any control over whether they'll run it, of course.
Right, and that's one of the things that you have published a book about, is how to use press releases.
That's correct. I have a lot of nonfiction. Most of it centers around writing and things that you might need to know about writing. And then I also have other books, and I've just released a fiction book on When Panda Was a Boy, and it's a collection of stories on gender identity for K through 8. And I did all the illustrations with quilts. So I try to get...
That's what I didn't know about that book. You did share that with me, and I've published some information about that on my own blog and connected it with a friend of mine's book on similar issues, but I didn't know about the illustrations. So how long have you been making quilts?
Well, I probably started when I was a kid making quilts, but it wasn't my favorite pastime when I was a kid. And I really got the idea of doing the quilts. Actually, there was a camp that was going to happen, a 3 or 4 day camp at Ferry Beach the same week I normally go to Ferry Beach every year, and it was going to be making fiber art, and it was these decorative quilts. And so I saw them, and I thought, oh, yeah, I can do that. So I started on them before I even, got to Ferry Beach. So I already had like a couple of them already started, and then I learned few nice techniques and stuff, and it was fun. And so that's how I got into doing the quilts, and that was the perfect way. I don't draw well, but I can cut it out. You give me a piece of fabric, and I probably can cut it out.
Okay, well, that's an important thing, because I did a few what I would call baby quilts, and they really were baby quilts. They were for my baby. I did one that involved applique, and I made my own design, which was the phases of the moon on one side, and the other side was just a piece of fabric that I liked, and I filled it with some nice down fill, and it still exists, and that is the entire total of my quilt making experience.
I made a quilt when I was a kid, like, I don't know, around 9, 10, 11, in there. It was a 9-patch, and they're just squares, and you sew them together. And boring, but
well, you have pictures. You have pictures of your quilts on your website, is that correct?
I believe I do have some pictures of my quilts on my website.
Okay, well, in a minute I'm going to try the screen share, but I'm a little leery of using it today on this day of great technical difficulties. What I will say to everybody is if you go to our event page, I have put all of Connie's links in one of the comments there, and one of her links, of course, is to her website. Now, which website, because you have more than one, which one is the one they should go to see the quilts? I have Publish with Connie, I have Connie Dunn Books, which one?
It's Publish with Connie, but I have one set up just for When Panda Was a Boy, and that's whenpandawasaboy.publishwithconnie.com.
Okay, so people can go to Publish with Connie and then go to When Panda Was a Boy.
Yes, and if they sign up there, they can get a free parent guide to talking with their children who might have all these questions about gender, which comes up naturally about 4 or 5, but then, this keeps getting revisited. So the stories that I have in the book, of course, are for K through 8, because there's some at all different levels. So anyway, if parents are interested in that, that seems to be a topic that keeps coming up. So,
well, that's a really good segue from quilts to Panda, because I want to talk about gender identity and gender dysphoria and transgender and intersex and all the different elements that could give a kid questions, make a kid wonder, have a kid or a parent wonder, have issues between the kid and the parents or the kids and their friends, all the different ways that can play out that can be both difficult, challenging, questioning, scary, sad, fascinating, interesting, fun. So what story in When Panda Was a Boy is your favorite for the beginning? Like, did you put the first story you want people to read in that book right in the beginning, or did you arrange them in order of age? How did you do it?
I actually put the one that I like the most in the title story at the very end so that they could read all the others and finally get to it.
Okay, that's one technique. And if somebody were picking up that book and had a very young child, is that the story you'd want them to read first, or is there one better for preschoolers?
That would be the story I would want them to read. And in the table of contents, it does show what age each story is basically for.
Great. And all your years as a religious educator, you worked with ages preschool through seniors and high school, right?
I did. I actually was lifespan, so I worked with kids and adults.
Excellent. So you really have a sense of what is appropriate for each age group, and in that age range, what vocabulary, what concepts, what emotions, what questions might be appropriate. And I think that's amazing because I've seen a lot of children's books where people seem to have no clue what's appropriate for kids. They say it's for grades 3 to 5, and the book just isn't.
Yeah,
So,
that is a problem sometimes. I actually have a book. I have a Kindle series called Creating Magic and it's only on Kindle. And one of the books that I published in there was on vocabulary, and it's how to keep your vocabulary into the right age range when you're writing children's books. So it tells you how to use words to help you do that.
oh, that's really good. You know, I'm going to save the screen share for showing your website and showing your books on your Author Central page toward the end in case it really screws up and kicks us out. Because I, at the moment, just don't have any faith in this technological moment with Google or anywhere else, and I don't want to frustrate our viewers by having an on and off again, which we have had in one of my other HOAs for that very reason. So let's keep talking for a while, and I'm interested again in what other subtopics of gender identity did you cover in this series of short stories you published? Do you want to talk about any in particular?
I covered just about all of the GLBTQ issues. Well, I didn't really go into bisexuals, but it's because, you know, with kids, I don't know that actually resonates with them that well until they get to be, you know, like in middle school and high school, maybe.
Well, let's field. I have a whole dissertation on gender and sexual orientation identity, so I just want to make a little division here. Gender identity has to do with what kind of a person we are, and whether in this culture we identify as a male or female, or as something that is sometimes called two-sexed or intersexed, and whether we're in the body we believe we belong in, or whether we're in a body that doesn't feel right to us. And when we're in a body that doesn't feel right to us, that's called gender dysphoria. Are we agreeing so far?
Yes, I did widen my gender identity because when kids start exploring gender issues, they aren't really exploring any of those particular things. They just are exploring, you know, what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl. So I kind of broadened it because when you're working with little kids, they don't have all of those little tags. And
Right.
when we get
Right.
old, we start having them. But I did cover a lot of those issues, and I have one where, well, let's just start with When Panda Was a Boy. And When Panda Was a Boy is a very gentle story about a grandma who comes to have a tea party with her granddaughter, and she's wearing her tea party hat and all dressed, ready to have this wonderful tea party. And she kind of wants the granddaughter to put on those pink frilly clothes and sit down and be a nice little lady and do all those nice little things that little girls can do. But this is not where Lisa, our little girl in that story, wants to be. She says, Panda, who is her stuffed panda bear, when he was a boy, he tells her all about how when he was a boy, he went out and jumped in mud puddles and stuff. And that's what she wants to do that day. She wants to wear her jeans and her t-shirt, be nice and comfy, and she wants to go out and play in the mud puddles.
Sure, sure. So then what you're doing is exploring with the grandchild conversation those gender questions, like what's appropriate, what makes you a girl, what makes you a boy?
Yeah, sort of that way. And also, Lisa asked her grandma what she was like when she was a boy. So, you know, there's a little bit of confusion sometimes with young children whether we start out one gender and end up another, which, of course, we can't do, but, well, I mean, we don't do naturally, I should say. So, you know, there's just some gentle things, and finally Grandma has to admit, yes, if you're Max or Fred, I would still love you because you're still my grandchild. And
Nice. Nice.
that is the point that, you know, I want people to get, is that we need to support our children no matter where they are. And the reason that I wrote this book to begin with is because I met all these teenagers at one time, which is probably about 15, 20 years ago. I met all these kids, and they'd been thrown out of their, a lot of them had been thrown out of their families because they were GLBTQ. And that just pulled at my heartstrings, and it was like, how could parents throw out their kids? I mean, you either love your kid or you don't.
Well, you bring up an interesting question. Sexual orientation identity, which is, do I feel attracted to people that look like me and have my same body parts, which makes me a homosexual, which we call gay if you're male, or lesbian if you're female, or do I feel attracted to anybody and it just matters whether I care about them? That makes me omnisexual or bisexual. Or do I only feel attracted to people who look different from me, which would be, if I'm a girl, I'm attracted to boys, and vice versa, which makes me heterosexual. And a lot of people are questioning that, starting as young as the age of 4. So if they're the same as other people, or if they're different from their friends, why does everybody keep asking me who my boyfriend is when I'm only interested in girls? Things like that. So there's a lot of questions that go on about both gender and sexual orientation identity at a very young age and continue into adolescence. And usually by the age of 11 or 12, kids know. They know exactly who they're attracted to and what kinds of body parts they have. And a lot of parents are not okay. They're not accepting their kids being homosexual or bisexual or pansexual or omnisexual, whatever the current term is. And they're also not accepting kids who are not what the current term is cisgender, C-I-S gender, which means conforming to the gender identity that your body says you are. And if you don't conform to that, you don't feel good in it, parents don't accept it. They don't want you changing into a girl if you're born with a boy's parts, and vice versa. So they do kick them out of their lives. They do kick them out of the house. They're afraid of them. They're angry. They're disappointed. All kinds of emotions come up for those parents. We can judge them or wish they were different, but that is what happens. So you're right. You're going to meet a lot of runaways who have had those issues, and that's one of the reasons they ran away.
And one of the reasons that I wrote my book, and one of the ways I wrote my book, is so that the adults in the stories model good communications with the child in the story, so that it's almost just as much for the parents as it is for the kids, so that they understand how to talk to their kids. This is not a subject that you grow up learning how to address.
Really?
Yeah, most people, I mean, I know I didn't. My mom called all of my parts as you know, and so that was definitely confusing. So I've always been able to talk about sexuality, and that's difficult.
It is difficult when you can't even name your body parts. You've got the down there, the you know, the hoo-ha, the which what, the whatever you have for a nickname for it. We won't go into them all. And that doesn't help you feel positive, comfortable, secure, safe, unembarrassed. All of that creates problems, and we all have been around people who've done that or have had it done around us. So we know those are issues. And a few minutes ago, Connie, you said something about how, well, we don't change into one gender. We're born with one, and that's the one we're born with. When people are gender conforming or gender dysphoric, they might disagree with that. But I actually discovered some Native American tribes right in this country who have a very different concept of gender identity. They believe that babies up to the age of puberty are one gender, and then when they hit puberty, they become the physical gender of that body. Reproductively, males become males, females become females, and then when you stop being a reproducer or hit a certain age, for women and men, you go back to the one you were as a child. So they actually have a dual gender identity life, and it's a very interesting way of thinking about it. So old women used to be young men. Are you following?
Yeah.
And it's real. It's real. It's what's been happening for a long time, and I don't know how they deal with it in the modern age, but it's well known, as anthropologists have found out, that this happens around the world in some cultures. So I'm curious about that, because clearly the early life and the later life have nothing to do with their body parts, but it has to do with what pronouns they're referred to by and how other people treat them.
Right. And that gets interesting. In fact, some of the Native Americans call people who are gay or lesbian, they call them two-spirited.
Yes.
So that they actually have both like male and female within them.
Well, again, that's a confusion, because what they're really talking about when they're two-spirited is a gender identity blend, or people who are attracted to people of both genitalia, if we'll use that word. But
Okay.
two-spirited has now come to mean just a broad category of anyone who doesn't feel that they conform and they're not narrowly defining themselves within sexual orientation or gender identity. And I think that's very interesting, because two-spirited, really the number two isn't even correct for some people, and they feel very what they call pan-identified or omni-identified as either their sexual orientation or their gender. So I'm not sure about all that, because it doesn't occur for me in that exact way. I do consider myself bisexual and have known that since I was very young. There wasn't a word for it when I was very young, but I was aware of being attracted to both girls and boys, and having that sense of myself as a girl without any confusion. So my sexual orientation is bisexual, my gender identity is female, and I don't have dysphoria. But certainly in this culture, bisexuality wasn't accepted or even labeled for a very long time in my life. I didn't know what that was. And I didn't meet anybody till college who even talked about it.
Yeah, well, we don't, do we? It's just one of those things you don't, it's a taboo. It's one of those taboos that you don't talk about.
Well, I think in our generation that was true, but I think in the younger generations, thank goodness, that is not true at all.
Yeah.
And your book is one of the ways that becomes less and less true.
Yes, that's true. And I have met a lot of young adults and older teens that actually do talk about it. In fact, they basically don't want to be put into a binary system of male and female.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my stories actually takes place at Ferry Beach, and is some of the kids that work there, because that is some of the people that do work there during the summer, and they are deciding, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, which part shall I have today, or which should I dress as? What role do they want to take on? And so they do that in that story. So it's kind of fun to see that. And the girls have shaved their heads, and you can that's different, because they've shaved their head, or one of them has, and really is very much out there, not wanting to be put into any particular binary system. So they consider themselves gender neutral, or trans is what the word that they had used. That all of these terms are very fluid, and like at the point that I gathered them and put them in the book, I know they were true, but I'm hearing other words, and now so there are new terms that come up all the time that and this is really coming from the young adult community.
I believe that's true, and I believe that they are fluid, and that new generations, or even parts of generations and cultures, will come up with new terminology, and then it becomes, in this day and age with the social media fluidity of communication, they get picked up very quickly around the world. So that's interesting to me. And I'm also interested in the fact that you were talking about them changing on the moment of how they felt that day, or what other people around them are doing. And that was part of the subject of my research when I did my dissertation, which is that sexual orientation and gender identity can be fluid, and the more you feel safe and the more you feel connected to people around you, the more fluid you will be. And that I labeled differential authenticity, which has to do with the different contexts creating a differential relationship to your own identities, and how much you're willing to show and how much you're willing to be fluid, depending on how you feel safe and how you feel connected.
That's true. In fact, it's funny, because last night I was in a meeting. The Unitarian Universalist Association has a General Assembly once a year, and since I'm in Massachusetts, this was held in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, so it's very close. And I went to that, and in fact, a lot of people from my church went there, and we were talking about it. And one of the women was talking about how freeing it was to have co-ed bathrooms.
Oh. And why was that liberating? What did they say the reasons were?
Well, it was just kind of one of those, wow, that's really progressive, right? You know, because you could go in and it really doesn't matter whether you're in a bathroom with men or with women. You go into the stall, I mean, it's not like you're out there. And so it was just, you know, one of those interesting things. And of course, one of the things she said is that she thinks there was a man in there with a long skirt on. So I just was thinking, you know, it's not, it's you know, it's how people want to dress. I mean, and being accepted. And that is one of the I think it's important that we embrace all that diversity, because the more we embrace people who are different to us, the more we make it a safer world. And that could just go into, you know, I'm talking about sexuality here, but you know, it really can go the gambit. I mean, we can talk religious diversity, we can talk skin tone diversity, ethnicity diversity. There's just so many, you know, so many layers of diversity, and I just feel like, you know, every time we embrace something that is different to what we are, that helps us in the world. And not all of the world obviously is going to agree with that. Because we have.
Well, not everybody is going to be that accepting or welcoming. You're right about that, and many people have religious or personal values that create conflict for them in being welcoming or accepting, and then they have to struggle with that when the people they care about or the people they work with or the people they give birth to or are married to or have in their family in some other way turn out to be the people they are having trouble accepting and welcoming.
That's true.
And even worse if it's themselves. Those are the people, I think, with the worst conflicts.
I think it is difficult. In fact, I met a man a few years ago who had had a family. He was older. He was in, you know, middle age, and that's when, you know, I think he had thought all along that, you know, things didn't really match. But you get into a role and you play it, and so here he was, middle age, and discovering that really the problem wasn't that he was gay. He really just wanted to be a woman, and he still was attracted to women. So, you know, he was kind of a heterosexual at that point, and that didn't change when he decided that his body didn't match who he thought he was. Now, that's a very hard transition when you're in middle age, because
well,
you
actually,
have this.
It does change. It does change. Did you read Kate Bornstein's book that came out in the 90s called Gender Outlaw?
I did not read that one, but I think I'm aware of that one.
Well, I heard her speak when I went to University of Massachusetts. I was working on my graduate degrees there, and she came to speak, and she said one of the funniest things and kind of insightful things that I've heard on this whole topic, and I have never heard anything who said it this well since. Now, I may not be quoting her exactly, but here's her story. She was born a man who knew that he was attracted to boys right from the beginning, so he considered himself homosexual. As he got older, he also realized that he was actually a female. So at some point in his early adult life, he decided to have gender reassignment surgery, which he describes in great detail in this book, and then she becomes Kate.
Yes.
But she's still attracted to males at that point, and her partner is a male, so now she's a heterosexual. So she went from being a homosexual to being a heterosexual because now she's a female, but her partner.
Yeah, that gets into some really interesting things that happen.
Is just become a female, so she becomes a female, which then makes Kate a lesbian. So her comment about all that is, why do the genitalia of my partner dictate my sexual orientation identity?
Good
point. I thought it was a resonating question.
That's a very good question. A lot of times, too, when they go through those changes, the partners can't handle it. So that's another issue that they have to deal with. Is that
it is a big issue. And I think it's also really a serious issue when the children of that partnership have to deal with the sexual reassignment, gender identity reassignment of one of their parents.
Yeah, so that happens.
You've had a father all your life, and now you have two mothers, right? And some
Yeah.
people do okay with that, and some people really can't handle it. And I just applaud the people who just struggle with it and try to go through it the best they can.
That's about all you can do. But it is very life-changing for sure. And when you decide to take that plunge and make your body look like what you feel you are inside, that's a big step. Now, I've seen it happening a little more often with younger children, and so if they are doing it prepubescent, they actually can help reduce some of the stuff that you would have to do with just simply, changing hormones. Because if you catch it before they actually have, the boys have the deeper voice and, grow the, they can fix the Adam's apple. They don't have to go in and shave that. And with the girls, if they get them before that, they can start taking the testosterone, and then they don't grow breasts. So that just saves a little bit on the uncomfortable surgeries that have to be done.
Interesting. Now, I want to take a step out for a minute and talk about some of our viewers and commenters who've been participating. I first want to thank Richard Clarkson, who's been trying to help us with our technical difficulties. He says, if your camera's highlighted red, it may be a temporary Google Plus issue. It's happened to him before and some other people. Is your camera highlighted red?
It was. Yes, it is.
Okay, so he says, that's not your fault, and, you're not doing anything wrong. Maybe it's just weird. He also said earlier on that he wondered if you selected the correct camera. And since you only have one, I don't think that was an issue. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it was an issue because I had earlier had my other camera hooked up, but I rebooted and everything after I had unplugged it. So everything should come up the way it's supposed to.
Okay, and then more on topic, Sheila Hensley joined us. Thanks, Sheila. And she said, the more we embrace diversity, the safer our world. Warm and comfortable concept, Connie Dunn. Wish we could all embrace that thought process. So she really liked what you said about that and wanted to comment. And thanks, Sheila, for taking the time to visit us and making that comment.
Yes, thank you, because it is true. I really believe that. The more we embrace diversity, the safer our world becomes, because if we can embrace a diversity over one issue, maybe we'll be more open to doing it over another. And we have a lot of issues in our world, and obviously lots of people don't agree on how to accept other people, and some of them are in the same country, which really is a problem.
It is. Some of them are in the same family, which is even a bigger problem.
Yep.
Well, listen, we could go on about this a very long time, but we don't have that much time, and I'd like to switch gears because you're a very diverse person yourself in that you have a lot of hats that you wear. So you're an author of fiction books, you're an author of nonfiction books, and you're an educator in your public life that you have retired from with religious education, but you've also been an educator about book marketing and book publishing, and you're still doing that. So would you like to tell us more about your publishing arm and how that works?
Yes, I run a lot of classes. So I have one that is 12 Easy Steps to Publishing, and I do that online. I also have an offline one that I do in person, and we do that over the course of a year because it's easier for them to write the book. However, the one online I've been running as 12 weeks. It makes it very quick, but then they're in the if they don't finish their book in that length of time and they still need help, I'm still there. So they have connections to me for as long as they need. But we go through the material, and it really does take us from concept through marketing, including developing a marketing plan for the book, even if you're not finished with it, and how you can start working on the marketing plan even before you finish your book, which is preferable these days.
And do you help people create what everyone's calling their author platform and social media and things like that?
Yes, I do. I have a course on that to help them learn how to build their website with WordPress, because WordPress is an easy to build website because you don't actually have to know how to do HTML or CSS or any of those other languages in order to create your website, which makes it a lot easier.
I'm an example of that. My niece, Sarah Miranda, set up my WordPress blog last year. I've had my 1-year blog anniversary a few weeks ago, and I've had my website going now, and I do blogging, and I put up things about my sci-fi series, the Spanner series, and now I put up things about my Google Plus Hangout on Air called Changes on my WordPress site. Each one has its own page. My blog, my Spanner series, my Changes, and people can go there and find out what they want, and I don't have to be brilliant about understanding website design or anything like that. I can just do it as an almost newbie, and it doesn't look terrible. So thank you, WordPress.
Yes, WordPress definitely has made making a website easy for most people, and that's good. So I do that. I find that more and more that my students that I work with are not tech friendly. They just do not understand it, especially the ones I have in person. The ones online, they kind of have to be somewhat tech savvy to even get there. So I have many, though, that are not. And I run into an awful lot of writers these days who still want to write longhand. So they're writing their story out, and then they go back and they type it in, and that's kind of when they're doing some of their revision work. So I guess it's a process, and everybody has their own.
I used to write like that, and I remember making the transition because I was in graduate school to being able to compose through my fingers typing instead of composing through my hand writing, and it took a couple years to get that switch in my creative brain to operate a different mechanism for the creation of text. And so I understand that, and I understand people needing to take some time to do that, but once I made the transition, I would never go back. I don't even know if my arm would let me. I have severe injuries. Sometimes I've fallen and other things, and my arms hurt, so typing is much better for me than using a pen or a pencil.
Well, yeah, and it's a revision work, too, that is easier in the computer.
Right. Oh my gosh. I don't know what I was thinking to be doing things on a regular typewriter and not even having, I mean, you started with regular typewriters. They didn't even have Correcto tape or anything. You had to just start over. And they had multiple carbon copies. So if you made a mistake, you had to start over or fix it on 3 or 4 copies. So we're so lucky that all these geniuses who figure out things have figured out word processing as well as they have, right?
Absolutely. Because I got into computers pretty early on. I was a journalist for about 30 years, and I wrote on technology, so I kind of had to get on computers really early on because the magazines that I worked for took everything electronically. And, of course, we didn't have the Internet back then. Email was you had to sign up for the same service. So
right.
If you didn't have the same service, you weren't communicating. So we did a lot. We did a lot of stuff that way, though, electronically. Even before, like now, it's like a no-brainer. But then it was, really kind of out there. But it was fun. I enjoyed it.
On and on about the old days and file transfer protocols and having to use HyperCard and all that kind of stuff. I know we can just reminisce and remind ourselves of how bad it was.
Yeah, all those kinds of things, because there was a lot of that. Anyway, so I've been on for a while. I'm pretty tech savvy. A lot of new technology keeps coming out, though, and it's really hard to stay up with. But
yeah. So let me tell you what we're going to do now. We've got about 15 minutes, Connie. For the last 5 minutes, I am going to try to do that screen share and show your website and your author page, so it may or may not kick us out at that point. Google Plus is not being so nice today. Before we do that, I'd like you to spend a few minutes telling people what the best entry points are for reaching you as a publisher and a consultant in the area of publishing, which books you'd like them to read first or take out in the way of fiction, and just give us your plugs and links, which I did put some of them on this page, the event page in Google+, but you can say them for people watching on YouTube, and tell us what you want us to know about how to reach you and find your work.
My website is http://publishwithconnie.com. That's publishwithconnie.com. And that is the best website. Everything is on that site, pretty much that you would want. There is links to all the books and all of the things I have done. I do have a new series out that's a Kindle 99-cent series for fiction writers. If you're a fiction writer, you might want to go check those out. It's called Creating Magic. It's on Kindle, and that's the only way that it comes. But you can get a Kindle plug-in if you don't have that. I'm going to say that's really the best website to get pretty much anything and everything. I do have two things that I do for authors. One, I have a regular teleseminar every Monday, and it's called Monday Morning Red Hot Teleseminar Series, and that's to chase those Monday morning writing blues away. So we're going to be inspirational, and these are primarily author journeys, and we all get into writing a little bit different way, and it's very interesting to listen to all the things that different people have gone through. So
okay.
Do that, and to get onto that, again, is on my website. It's publishwithconnie.com/Monday morning to sign up for that series. And if you are an author, you would want to contact me and let me know that you wanted to be part of that. And I also do take guest blog posts. And so people who are authors, those are the services that I offer for free, and help you marketing your book, because that's part of what we do when we market our books, is doing these.
So let me just get this right. After the slash, it says Monday morning?
Yes, Monday morning.
Great. I'm putting that in our comments here so people can find it.
It's all lowercase and jammed together.
Great, great. And Sheila's writing that she never thought about the transition from writing on paper to digital. It was hard, but so much easier and speedy. Old memories, yes. So we have people here of a certain age, we'll call it, who are reminiscing about that transition. And I appreciate also, Connie, that you've got that span of understanding of both journalism and education, publishing in both fiction and nonfiction, and understanding all different age groups in your fiction writing, and all different kinds of authors who are both technical and savvy in technology and not. So in that way, you fit right into my series, which is called the Spanners series, because I talk a lot about people who are the bridges, the spanners between the centuries, between when the aliens aren't visible and when they are, between all different kinds of cultural, biological, and social changes before and after. So you would fit right in to the people in my series.
Very good. Yes, I probably do.
So this is the question I always like to go toward the end of our Hangout on Air with in this Changes series. And the way I frame it is, I want you to think about the local, the personal, the regional and the global, the social, political, and any other kind of changes that you notice within and around you, and comment on them for the last few minutes of your time on my show here. What would you like to talk about that relates to changes right now?
Well, that's a big topic, isn't it? I definitely.
You can just pick one part if you want.
I think if I guess to speak on changes that I would like to see, I think some of it's happening already. All of the same-sex marriage equality stuff that's going on, and of course it's started here in Massachusetts. It's spread to most of the New England states, and now is filtering out all over the United States. And you know, the argument that was brought up to begin with was that if same-sex people were able to marry, that would somehow make the sanctity of marriage for heterosexuals less valid. And of course, that's like saying, you know, when you eat fish, it offends me because I might be vegan. You know, it doesn't affect you. You know, those things don't affect each other. I guess it might if you were both sitting at the same table, and vegans don't like to look at meat of any kind. But, you know, that's the deal. Marriage is a contract, and a simple contract, a specific one, and it's really a civil contract to make everything legal between the two people who get married. And then there's the spiritual marriage that you might have through your church, and that's okay. You can have both of those together, or you can do them separately. They don't necessarily affect each other. And I think more and more in this country, we are seeing a little bit more of that acceptance, and that makes me happy.
Oh, that's wonderful. I really liked hearing that from you, and given what you write about and the different things you've experienced, I think that your idea of what changes we are experiencing and are about to experience and which ones you want go right along with what you're writing. So thank you for that congruence. I really like seeing that, and thank you so much for being my guest on this Changes episode. And you can reach me at sallyember.com, and all of my links are there for books and my blog and this HOA. I'm always looking for new guests. I need guests starting in October. I look especially for authors and change agents, people who are innovative in science fiction, in social change, in the way they do writing and publishing. It's a broad topic. So approach me through writing me at sallyember@yahoo.com and tell me why you want to be on my show, and we'll go from there. I'm also going to try the screen share now, Connie. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Now, what might happen is I get kicked out, but you don't. So if I get kicked out and you don't, then you have to spend the last 5 or 10 minutes talking to people and saying whatever you want, and then I'll try to get back in and close it down.
Okay. That sounds like a good deal.
You could read from one of your books if you want. I'm not sure what you'll want to do if you do get to have that platform, but I think it's great, and I'm hoping that I don't get kicked out. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to screen share. Here we go, guys. All right, this is good. All right, and it's not giving me what I want, so I'm going to cancel, but it didn't kick me out, so this is good. All right, now I'm going to go to the right place, and hopefully now it's going to let me do the screen share the way I want. All right, so great. There's Connie Dunn Books, and I'm going to hit share. Cross your fingers. Is everybody seeing Connie Dunn Books?
Yep.
Yes? I'm going to make it big so you can really see it. And I'm going to scroll. So when I scroll, it should show. Is it scrolling?
It is scrolling.
Excellent. So now you can all see that she is asking you to check in with her on the right. You can email her. Connie will answer you within 4 hours, I think, if she can. And then it tells you different links you can click on. It tells you how to go to Publish with Connie or her Nature Woman Wisdom Press. And it also has some other icons you can go to and give you some great information there. You can learn all about Connie at another page on this website, which we're going to go to in a minute. And meanwhile, I'm going to go to her author page. Now, Connie, I'm kind of jealous that you have all these books you've published, and it looks like you published them all within about 5 minutes of each other. So how did you do that?
Well, the Kindle series might have been within about 5 minutes of each other, but the others really were different. Were a little bit further apart. But it may be that they're showing that because I had to gather them all up at the same time. So really didn't do them all at the same day.
Okay, so you didn't write them all in 1 week, but you might have uploaded them all in 1 week.
That's correct.
Okay, now we understand why a lot of them have similar dates, and now I'm not thinking that you're Superwoman. Although you do have a lot of books. You might be somewhat of a Superwoman. So your author page has 2 pages, and you can go to the next page here and see all kinds of other books you've put up on Amazon and in Kindle. Now, some of them are in paperback as well.
That's correct.
So, for those of you that are listening that are still not moving into the electronic book age, you won't get to look at my books, but you get to look at some of Connie's. You've got children's books, you've got nonfiction, you've got fiction. Now, it looks to me like your Kindle edition of Creating Magic is not in paperback. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's only in Kindle, and it's
okay.
And each of the books is 99 cents, and there's 10 of the books.
Okay, now I'm going back to your website, and we're looking at About the Author. And then also you've got events, like if you're doing any book signings or doing any seminars, that's where the events would be listed.
It would be. I don't know that that one is up to date.
Looks like you haven't had anything since March, so probably you want to go in there and wiggle around in there.
Yeah.
And then you've got your blogs. How often do you contribute to your blogs, Connie?
I try to do it weekly, but I have been very bad about getting all the different blogs that I have something on there every week. That's one of the problems. You have multiple websites and have multiple blogs. But
well, Google Plus has been really nice to me this morning in this particular way, and it's letting me turn off screen share, I hope. Are we back with me now? Can you see me?
Yes. I can see you.
Okay. And we're still seeing you with your aura bubbling out around you instead of your live face, which we're mad at Google about that, but can't have everything. So a couple other things I'm going to cover, and what would you like to say before we end?
I just want to thank you for having me on your show. I really have appreciated this. I'm sorry that everything didn't work the way it was supposed to, but I guess technology-wise, we always have to just be willing to go with the flow. And at least we could get on and I could talk. So I guess that was part of it.
Right, and I think that the screen share is cooperating is at least making up for the camera not cooperating, so people could get a sense of you. And I want to remind everybody that if you go to the events page that has this right now playing live, all the comments are there, all the links for Connie and for me are there, lots of other people's comments are there, and you can learn a lot from all that, and I hope you'll visit. There's a YouTube link to where this actual HOA will be archived forever and ever, amen, until YouTube goes out of business or the internet falls apart or whatever. And that'll be live starting in about 10 minutes or so, not live, but archived about 10 minutes or so after we end this broadcast. And there are 2 other episodes before this. The episode before this that I am excited about you watching is with Shay West. And I'm sorry, Marianne Jones, and the episode, our first episode was with Shay West, so you can go and watch those. Now, I want to remind everybody that we don't operate with Changes HOA every Wednesday, so please go to my website, sallyember.com/changes, to find out the schedule and to see who our very next guests are, and I'm going to leave that as a surprise for you. I'm not going to tell you who the next guest is, or which Wednesday it's going to be on. It'll be a test to see if anybody actually goes to look. But I also will be putting some posts on Google+, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, letting people know when the next session of HOA Changes is happening. Our episodes are live from 9 to 10 Central Time because I have moved to Missouri, and that's in the USA. And anyone who wants to be on, please get in touch with me, sallyember@yahoo.com. And please watch at least 1 episode before you do that to see if this is your cup of tea. Any last words, Connie?
Oh, I think I'm just going to say this is a great forum, and I'm really pleased that you have set this up for people.
Well, thank you. You've been a great guest. I've really enjoyed talking with you and seeing how our paths have crossed and all the different ways we've intersected, even if we didn't actually meet, with Ferry Beach and Unitarian Universalist religious education and being educators and being writers and being women of a certain age in America. And I lived in New England, every state in New England, for over 25 years, mostly New Hampshire, but I lived in Westport Point, Massachusetts. How far away is that from you?
A good ways. I'm in Franklin, Mass., which is about halfway between Boston and Providence.
Okay, but it's not that far, really, because it's still in the eastern side of the state. So we could have waved to each other when I lived there. That was in the late 70s. And
yeah, I was in Texas then. I think it would have been harder.
It would have been a very long wave. All right. Thanks again to everybody who visited live and everybody who's listening now. If you weren't visiting live, thank you for visiting. And please check out Connie Dunn's websites, publishingwithconnie.com and ConnieDunnBooks.com, and her author site on Amazon. Connie Dunn, ConnieDunn. And check me out too, Sally Ember, SallyEmber.com. Thanks everybody for visiting. And I'm going to leave you with our little tagline that I never can remember. And I think it has to do with be ready for the changes. Are you ready for the changes? How are you doing with the changes? Thank you for playing with the changes. Thanks, everybody. When I stop the broadcast, Connie, don't go away, because I think you and I can still talk, okay?
Okay.
All right, we're going to end now. Thanks, everybody.